Alright, what's going on everyone? We have some pretty exciting news because Planeswalker decks are back. We knew they were coming back with for 2021, but we have officially seen the reveal, well technically like a week ago, but whatever. And these are the decks. The white one is Basri, Devoted Paladin. Blue is Teferi, of course, because it's a Teferi set. Teferi, Timeless Voyager. Black is Liliana. We have Liliana Death Mage. Red is Chandra, Flames Catalyst. And green is Garrick, Savage Herald. And we get a look at some of the Planeswalker deck cards too, the exclusives. Now obviously we can't judge the power level of these decks based on exclusives because the exclusives are usually pretty bad. Wizards of the Coast intentionally powers these down because if they end up being like constructed playable and they're only available in Planeswalker decks, then that just creates a whole problem. So they're usually pretty weak overall, but they're synergistic to the deck. So even though we can't judge the power level, we can get an idea of what the decks are doing. So Basri, Devoted Paladin, has a +1 ability that puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature and gives it vigilance. His minus ability says whenever a creature attacks this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it, and that will count for all of your creatures, right? You -1, and every creature you control that attacks will get a +1/+1 counter. So that's actually pretty cool. And then the ultimate, all creatures get +2/+2 and gain flying, which is basically a game finisher. And we also get Basri's Aegis, which is the sort of the tutor, right? The thing that searches for it, and it puts +1/+1 counters on creatures as well. Yeah, basically we can see it cares very much about +1/+1 counters. This seems like I don't know if it's going to be tokens necessarily, but it's definitely going to try to go wide and distribute counters. You also get two other cards. Ardent of Hope says at the beginning of our combat, if we control the Planeswalker, it gets a +1/+1 counter. So once again, we've got counters, and we've got Sigil Contender. It's a 4-mana 3/3 that will have lifelink if it has a +1/+1 counter. So yeah, very obvious here. All of this cares very much about +1/+1 counters. I think we could safely say that the white deck is going to be putting out +1/+1 counters in some fashion. So expect to be doing that in the white deck. So Teferi seems all about drawing cards. The Planeswalker has a +1 draw a card, -3 it will bounce a creature to the top of its owner's library, and the -8 says each creature target opponent controls phases out and it won't phase back in until your next turn. This is going to make your opponent's board disappear, but it's not going to come back immediately. They have to wait a turn. The Wavecaster is your tutor. It searches up for the Planeswalker and it's a 5-mana 3/3 with flash, which is not great. A 5-mana 3/3 flash, not very good. Compare that to like Nightpack Ambusher, for example. The goal here obviously is just to tutor up the Planeswalker. And again, don't judge the power level of these decks based on these exclusives because they're always kind of bad. That's just the nature of these things. We have two other cards though. We have a 4-mana 3/3 that says when it attacks, if you control the Planeswalker, you draw a card. So these two really show the theme, right? This Historian is going to draw you a card every time it attacks when you have your Planeswalker. And the Mystic Skyfish says whenever you draw your second card each turn, it gains flying. Neither of these are particularly great. I don't think these are like exceptionally good cards, but they do illustrate what the deck is going to be doing. It's going to be drawing. It wants to draw multiple cards, and there's going to be a lot of support for this. I don't know what the whole deck list is going to be, but Throne of Eldraine and Theros had a lot of cards that cared about drawing your second card, right? I suspect this deck will have a lot of support and be pretty easy to upgrade, even if these cards themselves aren't great. If it's going to have a lot of support for drawing extra cards, then this deck will probably be very upgradable. Moving on to Liliana, the Planeswalker allows you to return one target creature card from your graveyard to your hand, which is fine. The -3 destroys a creature, which is pretty good. Having just a minus destroy something, always nice. It also makes them lose 2 life, so that's pretty cool too. And then the -7, target opponent loses 2 life for each creature card in your graveyard. And if that's any indication, this is going to be a graveyard deck. And then the tutor destroys a creature and then searches up Liliana, which is not really caring about stuff in your graveyard, but a removal spell is nice. 5-mana removal is a little bit much, but it does get your Planeswalker, so whatever. The other two cards we get, Liliana's Scrounger says at the beginning of each instep, if a creature died this turn, you may put a loyalty counter on a Planeswalker. So we have more removal. This seems like a removal heavy deck. It doesn't actually remove stuff, but it cares about removing stuff. It cares about stuff dying. And the Spirit of Malevolence, whenever it dies, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life, kind of like a scorpion, right? The serrated scorpion, similar to that. So we have a lot of stuff that cares about things dying. This seems like it wants to be a removal heavy deck. Seems very appropriate for not only Liliana, but the color black in general. Moving on to the Chandra deck. This one seems really generic. it's all about damage, right? It's all about burn. Chandra herself, +1, deal 3 damage to the opponent. -2 is you can cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, which seems to indicate that this deck wants to burn, right? It wants the plus to burn, it wants to -2 potentially recast burn spells. And then -8, discard your hand, draw 7 cards. Obviously, you want to do that when your hand's empty, right? If your hand's empty, you discard 0 cards, and then you just draw 7, which is pretty crazy. And then you can cast anything without paying the mana cost, which I feel like is pretty much always going to win the game, right? If you get to just draw 7 cards and cast everything, unless you get a really unlucky, that's going to be like a game winner kind of. And then Chandra's Fire Maul is the tutor, again, 5 mana, 4/2 haste, and it searches up Chandra. Terrible, 5 mana, 4/2 haste, not good at all, but the idea, of course, is to get Chandra, so it is what it is, not a good card, but it will get you Chandra, I guess, so that's cool. Then we have Carol Keep
Disciples.
4 mana, 4/3 is reasonable, like that's fine to start with. Whenever you activate Chandra, it'll deal 1 damage to each opponent, so once again, we care about dealing damage. Chandra can tick up, deal 3 damage, that'll trigger this, deal another damage. You can -2, cast a spell, trigger this, get another damage, right? It's definitely caring a lot about damage. And then we have, this is actually kind of spicy. I don't know if I'm reading too much into this. I actually think this card is, like, it's okay. It's not great, but it seems like reasonable. It's a 3 mana 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to each opponent. And this reminds me exactly of Viashino Pyromancer. It was a 2 mana 2/1 that dealt 2 damage. And that was a little bit better because 2 mana for 2 damage was pretty good. And then 2 mana for 2/1 was fine. This is a little bit clunkier because you're only getting 2 damage for 3 mana and then you get a 3/2. So it doesn't scale. Like if it dealt 3 damage, this would be really, really spicy. Like I would almost consider this, I don't want to say it's constructed playable, but if it dealt 3 damage, like it would be really close to being at least decent in some decks. As it is, like it's fine. I don't think it's bad. We have to see what's in the deck and stuff, but it might actually be worth keeping in the deck. I think it's still decent, but this is one of the few times that I've ever looked at a Planeswalker deck card and been like, that's actually not bad. You know, it's not great. It's not as good as Viashino Pyromancer by any means, but seems okay. But anyway, that's the Chandra deck. You know, all we really get is it cares about dealing burn damage. That's all we really know. We don't know. I don't even know if that's going to be the theme of the deck. I don't know if it's going to care about burn damage or if it's just, you know, what we see in these 4 cards, because, you know, it is red, so of course it's going to deal lots of direct damage. But yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see. This one is up in the air as to whether it's going to have a different theme or if it's just all burn. And then finally we have Garruk. Garruk Savage Herald is a 6 mana 5 loyalty planeswalker that allows you to look at the top card of your library. You technically reveal it, and if it's a creature card, you put it into your hand. So digging for creatures, that not surprising. A green deck is going to care about creatures. The -2, it has that new, not necessarily brand new, but that this more modern sort of fight mechanic where a creature you control deals damage equal to its power to another creature, which is nice because fighting means that a lot of times you might lose your creature, but this is that more modern, your creature deals the damage, but they don't deal damage back, so that's nice. And then -7, creatures you control gain, you may have this creature assigned combat damage as though it weren't blocked. That's not quite the same as unblockable because they will still take combat damage if they're blocked, but basically just add up all your power, and if it's enough to kill your opponent, then you win. That's basically it. That's what happens. So yeah, seems to care very much about creatures. It digs for creatures, it allows your creatures to fight, and then it makes sure creatures kill the opponent. So creatures, yep, very green. So the tutor is, you know, it's again kind of a mediocre creature. 5 mana 3/5 with vigilance, a little bit more defensive. It's also got Garruk riding a rhinoceros, so I'm a fan. I'm a fan of this. But yeah, 5 mana 3/5 vigilance. Vigilance is nice, by the way. And it tutors up Garruk. So yeah, pretty simple. And then we have another card that I don't think it's good, but seems okay. Like it seems reasonable. A Predatory Worm, 4 mana 4/4 with vigilance. That gets +2/+2 if you control Garruk. This isn't constructed playable. I mean, compare it side by side with like Questing Beast. There's obviously no reason you would ever play this over Questing Beast. But a 4 mana 4/4 with vigilance is fine. And the fact that it becomes 6/6 with vigilance also reasonable. So I don't think this is great, but it's not blatantly terrible like a lot of Planeswalker deck cards, so that's fine. But speaking of blatantly terrible, it also has Wildwood Patrol, which is a 3 mana 4/2 trample, and this is just unplayable. I mean, there are countless better creatures you can play in this slot, like Crystalline Giant, or Lovestruck Beast, or Thrashing Brontodon, or Yorvo. Yeah, so lots of better cards than this. We're not going to be playing this. I guarantee this will be getting the axe when I do my upgrades, because 3 mana 4/2 trample, nah, not great. But yeah, there you go guys. Those are the decks. Let me repeat one more time. We can't judge these decks based on what we see, because again, those Planeswalker deck cards, those exclusives that are only in the deck, are usually pretty weak by design, intentionally. So we don't know how good these will be, but I think we can safely say that we have a white deck that cares about +1/+1 counters, a blue deck that wants to draw cards, a black deck that cares about killing creatures and filling the graveyard, a red deck that likes to burn stuff, and a green deck that likes creatures. And that's perfectly reasonable for a core set. You would expect the strategies to be relatively close to, you know, the what you would traditionally think of the colors doing. We're not going to have crazy mechanics. This is a core set, so it's going to be more basic. So of course they kind of stick to the basic themes of those colors. So, you know, creatures, card drawing, burning, all that stuff. Pretty simple. And yeah, we'll see what comes of these. We'll see if there's any other spiciness. But in the meantime, at least now we know what the Planeswalker decks will be. We have a pretty decent idea of what the themes are going to be, and yeah, should be interesting. I will definitely, of course, like I've been saying, I will definitely be doing upgrade guides. So if you buy these, expect those to come out eventually, usually 2-ish weeks after the release, because I like to wait for the prices to settle down. So those will definitely be coming. But in the meantime, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.